Paul Thomas Anderson seems to be interested in ambitious, morally ambiguous men. With The Master, he explored the dangerous influence of cult leaders, and with Magnolia, of disturbed husbands and fathers. Before those films, though, he made his most focused study of this kind of man with There Will Be Blood. The lead here, Daniel Plainview, played by Daniel Day-Lewis, is an amoral, detached figure, violently searching the earth for wealth and for meaning. When Daniel markets himself to prospective clients or partners, he gives a speech about being an oil man. He explains that because he's a real oil man, he speaks plainly. This implies some association between labouring in the ground and truth, honesty or directness. Oil men are of the earth, harsh, practical, but they're also gritty, and in them wells up from some deep recesses, sometimes violently, a darkness. Daniel is perhaps more oil man than human. He's more at home digging in the muck than talking with a brother, a son, or a father. I also think Daniel represents the experience of the director, trudging through America, taking a plain, dispassionate view of what he sees. He digs for some hidden gems, but instead finds mainly mud, blood, and other frauds trying to grab their share of the profits. Daniel does direct a lot of the action in his world, but he's also often seen sitting back, detached, simply observing. In this way, Daniel Plainview, DP, is perhaps also like the cinematographer. He's a detached observer, surveying the land and its people, trying to mine them for some meaning, for some common ground. But no matter how hard he tries, how deep he digs, he finds only darkness. As Daniel admits to his brother, he sees the worst in people. His profession then, digging deep and finding only dark, greasy oil, is perhaps analogous for Daniel's experience of other people, and perhaps also for the director's experience of mining humanity for meaning. Daniel's cold gaze and the darkness that dredges up in others reinforces his view that others are not to be trusted. Daniel is right in some cases. The other people in his life, such as his so-called brother, Henry, do deceive him and reveal themselves to be self-centered. At other times, he's given the opportunity for sympathy and connection with others, the opportunity to see himself in others, but he doesn't take these opportunities. He sees reflections of himself in HW, in Eli, and in Henry. When he looks too deep, though, he doesn't find himself or a shared worldview. He finds darkness and a reason for violence and further isolation. Again, this is something possibly shared by Anderson himself. His works are often character studies whose deep digging reveals mainly self-centered, competitive, dark impulses in humanity. There Will Be Blood is interested also in the idea of the double. Characters and their behaviours are often paired or presented as reflections of one another. Daniel is an ambitious, deceptive, non-religious man, and then say Eli is also a deceptive, ambitious, but religious man. Eli himself is of course doubled with his more ambitious, more pragmatic twin brother Paul. Eli and Daniel are paired and connected in key stages throughout the course of the film. When Eli shows his desire for money, but poorly and weakly, Daniel slaps him and wrestles him into the mud. Soon after, Eli parrots this behaviour. With mud on his face as a visible reminder of Daniel's recent assault and of his dark influence over Eli, he pushes his father down in the same fashion, also as punishment for an ill-advised play for money. Later, when Daniel is in church, Eli slaps him and makes him repeat these self-deprecating admissions. This too is a means to financial ends, so that Daniel can get the final lot of land he needs to build his pipeline. Now this scene is mirrored yet again much later in the final scene of the film, in Daniel's church of sorts, his bowling alley, when Eli is made to repeat self-deprecating utterances himself. As Daniel did before, Eli makes these self-damaging admissions in the hope of making money. He's trying to forge a new business deal with Daniel. Ultimately, There Will Be Blood is about a man who is ambitious, successful, but disconnected. In his search for meaning and wealth, he finds reflections of himself in a false father, Eli, in a false brother, Henry, and in a false son, HW. Each could have been a meaningful connection for Daniel, but instead he dug deeper and found darkness, the darkness in them. In each case, as in his career, he uses his dark findings as fuel for violence and further disconnection from humanity. If these other characters represent reflections of Daniel, or of parts of himself, then with each violent encounter, he's also damaging himself. With each conflict, we see him stoop lower and lower into the mud and into the darkness.
I drink your milkshake.